here from Non-Magicians, and we will continue with our Precalculus course. Today we will see complex numbers. The definition of a complex number is any number that can be written in the form a plus b, where a is a real number and b is an imaginary part. It's a real number but an imaginary part. Here you have properties of real numbers for addition and subtraction. The first type of exercise is, it says, write the sum or difference in the standard form, a plus bi, without using a calculator. Okay, I'm going to change my color and I'm going to number these two exercises as number 1 and number 2. Number 1 says that square root of 5 minus 3i, what I'm going to do for number 1 is that I'm going to eliminate my parentheses. Since it's an addition or a sum, I don't have to change any sign. I'm just going to continue with the signs that they have. Square root of 5 minus 3i minus 2 plus the square root of negative 9. Now, an imaginary number can be a negative inside a square root, like in this case with 9. You know that the square root of 9 is 3, but because it has a negative inside, we are going to do this. We copy the rest, and this becomes, the square root of 9 is 3, and the negative sign becomes an I. Once you have this, you check your like terms. In this case, you eliminate these two because 3i minus 3i is 0. Your final answer is just square root of 5 minus 2. That would be for number 1. For number 2, they include the complex numbers already, and there is a property that you should remember. It says I to the square is always going to be equal to negative 1. Okay, that is a property to remember. And every time you see an I to the square, like in this case, is going to be a negative 1. So I can say that this is negative 1 plus 3. Now, here I have a difference. So if you get confused, just use your parentheses. We copy what you have inside, 7. And I'm going to try to make that I to the third power into an I to the square. So what we're going to do is this. I to the square times I. It's like saying I to the cube. If you start evaluating this, this is negative 1 plus 3 minus 7. This here, we said that becomes negative 1. And negative times positive is negative. And then you multiply times negative here, it would be positive I. Now, with that, you start evaluating. Negative 1 plus 3 minus 7 is negative 5 plus I. This is your answer. With this, we're going to continue with the next part of the video. The next one says, write the product in standard form, okay, a multiplication, without using a calculator again. Now, for this one, you have to multiply, and when you see two parentheses, what you do is your FOIL property. Square root of negative 2 times 6 is 6, and remember that the negative becomes an I. Square root of 2. Then, square root of negative 2 times 5i, remember that the negative becomes an I. So here it's like having two i's, square root of 2. And then you have 2 times 6, or 2i times 6 is 12i. And the last one will be positive 2i times positive 5i would be positive 10i to the square. I to the square is negative. This is like saying I to the square also. So you're going to have 6i square root of 2 minus, because of the I to the square, 5 square root of 2 plus 12i. And this is negative 1 times positive would be negative 10. You check if you have like terms. In this case, we don't. So we're going to group them to factorize, to find a common factor. Let's group the i's together. 6i square root of 2 plus 12i inside a group plus, then you have negative 5 square root of 2. Let's finish the square root here. Let's do it correctly. Square root of 2 minus 10. Okay, common factors. For the first one, would be for the first parenthesis, 6i is your common factor. If you start dividing, 6i divided by 6i is 1. So you just have the square root of 2. 12i divided by 6i is just 2. And common factor here would be negative 5. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is positive 1, so it's just 2. And negative 10 divided by negative 5 would be positive 2. Okay, you can leave it here, you can continue it, but later on we will see that part. Right now, this would be your answer. Let's continue with the next exercise. It says, write the complex number in standard form. And as you can see, now you have a fourth power. But this you can separate it, and it can look like this. The parentheses of the square root of 2 over 2 plus the square root of 2 over 2 I to the square can multiply the same thing, that is, the square root of 2 over 2 plus the square root of 2 over 2i and also to the square. You can write it like that. It's the same thing as saying to the fourth power. Right now I'm going to separate these two in order to evaluate, and then I'm going to use my square power again. Okay, so right now I'm just going to make my multiplication of the numbers that are inside parentheses. I have the square root of 2 over 2 times the square root of 2 over 2. You can do it in your calculator. It's not necessary, but you can do it in your calculator. The square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just 2 over 2 times 2, that is your denominator, that is 4. We do the same process, but now with the first and last number. Would be the same multiplication. The only difference is that you include an I, plus 2 over 4i. Now you do the same operation here, be the same thing, 2 over 4i, and you make this multiplication, that is 2 over 4i to the square. Now you can simplify if you need to. You can simplify, or you can just start evaluating. I'll start evaluating. I'll just change my color back to black. 2 over 4, I have it here. And I have 2 over 4 with an I to the square, that is negative. And because this becomes negative, I can simplify it with this one, because 2 over 4 minus 2 over 4 would be 0. So I just have this addition here. 2 over 4 plus 2 over 4 is going to be I. And remember that we had a squared power. I to the square is equal to negative 1. Your answer here would be negative 1. Let's continue with the next type of exercise. He says, write the expression in standard form. Okay, to write in standard form, we need to evaluate that fraction and make the parentheses disappear. So, how are we going to make the parentheses disappear? By using our FOIL property. If we start multiplying, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2i would be 4i. Then negative I times 1 is negative 1i, or just negative I. And negative I times positive 2i would be negative 2i to the square. And we copy our same denominator, that was 5 plus 2i. Now, I to the square, remember that was negative 1. And negative 1 times negative is positive. So you have 2 plus 2 would be 4. And 4 minus I would just be 3i, making your like terms over 5 plus 2i. Now, the idea is to change the I, or make the I disappear from the denominator. To do that, we're going to do something called rationalization. Rationalization is multiplying your denominator by changing the sign of what you want to eliminate in the numerator and denominator. So what are we going to do? We're going to do this process again. Multiply by FOIL. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times negative 2i is negative 8i. Then 3 times 3i times 5 would be 15i. And 3i times negative 2i would be negative 6i squared. Over 5 times 5 would be 25. 5 times negative 2y is negative 10i. 2y times 5 would be positive 10i. And 2i times negative 2 would be negative 4i squared. Remember that I to the square is negative 1. So this is like saying positive 6 plus 20, that is here, like terms, would be 26. 8 negative plus 15 positive. If you evaluate this, 15 minus 8 would be 7. And it's positive because 15 is greater, 7i. Over. Here we can simplify or eliminate our i's. 20, and this becomes positive 4. 25 plus 4 is 29. With that information, you can just separate because you have to write in standard form. So you're going to have 26 over 29 plus 7i over 29. And this will be your answer. With this, we're going to continue with the next part of the video. Okay, for this exercise, it says solve the equation. What we're going to do is we're going to send every number, group them all to our left side. I'll copy x to the square plus x plus 11, and we change the sign of all the numbers that we're moving. Negative 5x plus 8. And now everything is going to be equal to 0. Now, once you have this, you check if you have like terms. X to the square has no like term, but x does. X minus 5x would be negative 4x, and 11 plus 8 would be 19. Now, this one cannot be factorized, and when a number cannot be factorized, what we're going to use is the quadratic formula. I'll copy it here. X is equal to negative b, positive negative, square root of b to the square minus 4ac over 2 times a. Okay, so that would be your quadratic formula. If we substitute our information in that formula, x is equal to negative b would be negative 4. B is your second number here. Positive and negative because of the square root. Square root of b to the square again, negative 4 to the square power, minus 4 times a. What would be a? A is your first number, that is 1, times c, that is your last number, that is 19. Let's close our parentheses here. Everything over 2 times a, that is 1. Let's start evaluating. X is equal to positive 4, positive negative, square root of 4 to the square, or negative 4 to the square is 16. And 4 times 1 times 19 would be negative 76. Divided by 2. If we continue evaluating this, 4 positive negative, square root of, what would be the square root of, what would be the subtraction of 16 minus 76? It would be negative 60 over 2. The negative 60, the negative becomes an I, and the 60 can be simplified. So this becomes 2. X is equal to 4 positive negative. The 60, if you simplify it in a square root, is 2 square root of 15, and remember that you have an I because of the negative, divided by 2. You can simplify these numbers. Your answer stays at 2 positive negative square root of 15 I. And this is your answer. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, math is magic.